Good evening from Japan, and greetings across time zones. Wherever you are, thank you for being here. Tonight is not only about ideas, it is about something we all know intimately: the body, relationship, and the way life begins. Before we explore systems or theories, let us return to something simple. How does life first feel safe? My name is Yuko Igarashi. This evening, I have the privilege of walking alongside four remarkable presenters. Each speaks from a different field of depth. My role is to gently trace the living connections that weave through their work, so that we may sense not only their individual contributions, but the larger movement they form together. Let us begin with the body. We often think of the body as something to manage, but what if the body is the first place where life feels received? If safety is the first condition for growth, how do we create it? Not in theory, but in the body itself. This is where Hoshiko begins. She listens to the body not as a problem to fix, but as a doorway to enter. She reminds us, when the body feels safe, life does not rush in. It arrives in its own time. And when we understand this, care changes. And when care changes, something else begins to shift, not only in the body, but in the inner world. For Reiko, safety does more than calm the nervous system. It shapes perception. It shapes memory. It shapes meaning. A baby does not regulate alone. A mother does not grow alone. Birth is never an isolated event. It unfolds within a relationship between mother and child, between caregivers and a community, across time and continuity of care, sustained by trust built slowly and intentionally. No one comes into the world alone. And because the mind forms in relationship, the way a woman is met in birth becomes part of how she remembers herself. So, the quality of birth is not measured only in immediate outcomes, but in what remains long after the moment has passed. And if something remains, we must ask, what is it that remembers? What shifts when we acknowledge babies as beings already in relationship? Not becoming conscious, but arriving conscious. Dr. Ikegawa's work brings together science, medicine, education, and lived experience to explore what prenatal awareness reveals about being human. His work moves between science and spirit, not to divide them, but to allow them to speak to one another. Not belief, but remembrance, a return to the center of how we understand life. We do not become conscious at birth. We arrive conscious. And if consciousness does not begin at birth, how do we speak about it? How do we explore what precedes language? We speak of connection. We speak of communication. But what happens before language organizes experience? before we explain ourselves, we are already relating. This question lives at the heart of Raquel Machin's work, creator of the project Before Birth. Through dialogue between science, philosophy, and spiritual traditions, and through interviews with leading researchers in consciousness studies, she investigates a profound possibility. Does consciousness begin at birth, or does it precede physical life? Her work invites us to consider the prenatal awareness may not be symbolic, but experiential, not imagined, but remembered. Today, she shares from this ongoing research, extending this conversation across linguistic and cultural boundaries. Before language, before memory, before form, there is presence. Consciousness does not enter life, it moves through it. The body listens, the mind forms in relationship, the spirit remembers. These are not separate domains. They are movements within one life, different entrance into the same continuum of being. Each person you are about to meet has entered through a different doorway. Their work may appear distinct, yet it rises from the same devotion: to listen to life before birth, and to remain faithful to the relationships that make life possible. And what does this look like in real life? Sometimes this movement does not begin with policy. It begins with women standing together. And when women stand together, something begins to move. Hoshiko and Reiko began with a quiet yet unwavering conviction. Their vision is to establish a community-rooted midwifery center and postpartum home in Wakayama, a place where women do not have to carry everything alone, a place where birth is guided through dialogue with the baby, a place where safety is not imposed but deeply felt. To bring this vision into form, they launched a crowdfunding campaign together with Yuri. In just 2 years, Yuri built a community of tens of thousands, amplifying women's voices into society and emerging as a new generation leader, connecting Japan and the world. Through this network, the project surpassed its second goal, raising 61 million yen, with more than 1,000 supporters. And on February 22nd, Yuri gave birth at home, supported by Reiko. The vision is no longer theoretical. It is lived. And as this work continues, they aim to engage governors and policymakers across prefectures, advocating for maternal care and community-based birth to be recognized within regional and national policy. From one region toward nurturing a culture of care. When this kind of care is practiced consistently, when birth is held not only by systems, but by people who truly know one another, something subtle begins to appear. It becomes visible, not as an ideal, but as lived reality. 2 documentary films quietly bear witness to this truth. One film stays close to the ground, inside a small midwifery community. Women Awaken Their True Nature reveals how continuity of care reshapes the atmosphere of birth itself, how trust built over time creates a safety no protocol alone can provide. The other turns our attention inward, toward the inner life of the unborn child. Smiles from the Womb invites us to listen to prenatal memory, not as abstraction, but as relationship already in motion. Together, these films show two expressions of the same continuum, one visible in hands, brooms, and relationships, the other carried quietly within consciousness itself. Dr. Ikegawa's work begins not with proof, but with listening. For decades, he has listened to children who speak of choosing, sensing, remembering. Rather than separating science from experience, or spirit from reason, he brings them into conversation. What do these memories reveal about how life begins, and how consciousness is shaped long before birth? From this question emerged Ikegawa prenatal memory theory, not as belief, but as an integrative framework allowing neuroscience, psychology, education, and human development to share language. That vision is now taking form as the Ikegawa Well-Being Academy, a living architecture of learning designed to grow in stages, supported through collaboration with the Kanose Education Group, a Japan-born internationally active network dedicated to cultivating human potential across education, healthcare, leadership, and community life. This partnership provides both foundation and pathway. The first movement is foundation. Through research and published studies around the world, the Academy deepens our understanding of how babies are aware and how relationship shapes us from the very beginning. At this stage, the work centers on language, not to reduce mystery, but to make meaningful dialogue possible across fields such as science, education, and care. One example of this effort is the development and academic presentation of a neuropsychological framework designed to explore patterns in how individuals process experience. This framework does not label people. Instead, it offers language, a bridge between inner experience and scientific understanding, so that ideas can move beyond theory and into everyday life within family, schools, and communities. With a strong foundation in place, the work begins to widen. Through international conferences, educational programs, and documentary storytelling, prenatal memory is shared more openly, not as doctrine, but as lived human experience. The intention is resonance, to reach both institutions and families, to invite conversation across cultures, to allow this understanding to travel without losing its depth or integrity. What begins in research moves into relationship. The final horizon is integration. By 2043, the Academy envisions prenatal awareness woven naturally into education, healthcare, and social policy, not as something unusual, not as something debated, but as a quiet shared understanding that babies are aware that relationship begins early, that care shapes consciousness long before birth. At this stage, prenatal memory is no longer a specialized field. It becomes part of our collective lens, a way of seeing life that influences how we teach, how we support families, and how we design systems of care. From foundation to resonance to integration. This is not something we are waiting to prove. It is something already taking shape in real communities. Across body, relationship, and consciousness, we begin to notice something shared. Care becomes real, not when it's explained, but when it is practiced, in how we stay present, how we respond, and how we protect life before it can speak for itself. Psychiatrist Daniel Siegel reminds us that the mind forms in relationship, within the body, between people, and across time. It is not me or we. It is both. Me plus we becomes something new. Me plus we equal me. Not as an identity we claim, but as a lived state that emerges when people feel secure enough to connect inner experience with shared meaning. Neuroscience now tells us that language reshapes the brain. The words and symbols we live with form new neural connections. If that is so, language does not merely describe reality. It participates in shaping it. So, perhaps the question is not, what more do we need to know? But, what kinds of connections do our words make possible? As you listen to the voices that follow, notice not only what is shared, but how it is shared. Because the beginning of life is not behind us. It is still calling us forward into deeper listening, into shared responsibility, into a future shaped by how we care at the very beginning. And perhaps the question is not what we will build, but who we will become as we welcome new life. The beginning of life is not behind us. It is still calling us forward. The future is already arriving.